this weekend, the High Holy Days. I'm
Right?
so excited.
It was incredible.
You know, it was a group effort, I can tell you that.
Is it archived?
Yes.
Oh my God, it was spectacular.
Yeah,
It
we've been
was,
obviously, we've been working on it pretty much all summer. Once we knew what we were going to be doing and how.
so what
And
were the challenges? Talk about it a little bit.
well, I'll tell you, some of the challenges were, uh, a little history for the Slichot service that, we now do, communally. Uh, I'm proud to say and to take credit for it. It was about 7 years ago, and it was in like the month of May, and I was looking at the calendar, and I realized that Slichot. I'm pretty sure this was like 2014 or 15. I realized that Slichot was going to occur on Labor Day weekend, and it occurred to me that. Boy, this is going to be really hard this year to do a beautiful Slichot service and have it, on Labor Day weekend. We're going to get very few people. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to call up my cantorial colleagues around LA and see if they'd be interested in doing one big communal Slichot. And sure enough, they were. So the first year, which is actually 7 years ago, we did the first one at Stephen Wise, and we had Stephen Wise, Wilshire Boulevard Temple, Kehilat Israel, Temple Emmanuel, Temple, let's see, we also had University Synagogue. So there were, I think, 5 of us, and we had about 750 people there.
Wow.
It was an amazing success. The second year, we did it at Stephen Wise again because, really, in terms of location, they were kind of the best location, right? Because, to have them all from the valley and whatnot come down to the Glazer campus might have been problematic, and KI is too far in the Palisades and whatnot. So we did the second year. We had about 600 people. Then the third year we hosted at Wilshire Boulevard Temple in the Sanctuary. We had over 600 people there. The fourth year we did it at University Synagogue. Not a great attendance there, I have to say. But then last year we did it at Temple Emmanuel, and we had a packed house at Temple Emmanuel. And this year was supposed to be ours again. And, once we knew, well, we're not going to do it in our sanctuary, we tried to keep the idea, doing it with other synagogues. And this year, as you saw, we had Sinai Temple and Valley Beth Shalom join us as well. And, then we just got started working on it. And step by step, put it all together, and you saw what the results were. I should thank our amazing creative video and film expert, Tess Cutler, who's been working for the temple the last year or two. She's the daughter of Rabbi Jerry Cutler here in Los Angeles, and she's an extraordinarily talented young woman and a delight, and she has a brilliant eye for editing and putting all these things together so that it looks good and flows beautifully. And the only other challenge, well, one of the other challenges was, getting as it was, let's see, 7 cantors and even more rabbis to participate in a timely fashion. Right, and but we did it, and I was just really pleased and so happy that so many people seem to, really enjoy it and find it meaningful and engaging. And
Do you know how many people were on?
that's a good question. I think for the service, I think we had over 600 viewers for the service. It was a little more fractured viewing for the rabbi sessions, only because some of the synagogues just posted those teaching sessions to their own congregants.
Wow.
Right? We opened it up to everybody. So the teaching sessions had different amounts of people, a variety from, I think, from like 30 people on some to 50 and 60 to others. But then the service itself had over 600 viewers, which was really gratifying. And now we're on to the big days.
Oh my God,
Right.
it was so spectacular. It was so beautifully knitted together.
Right?
It was really, it was really fabulous.
Yeah, yeah, really, really pleased. I mean, everybody worked so hard and contributed so much. And at the end of the day, you know, what really made it, as you just said, so beautiful and edited and sewn together beautifully. Over 2,000 views on Facebook, right? We
Wow.
had for the service. Over
Whoa, the service had over 2,000 views on Facebook?
Yeah, yeah. Now that number sounds impressive, but I have to be honest. A viewer on Facebook, I think, if they log on, if they stay on, what is it, Don, for 3 minutes? If you're on Facebook,
No, forget 3 minutes. They start counting at 3 seconds.
oh, that's right. So I had it.
Oh, all right.
If you're on for 3 seconds, you're a viewer. So,
But they really count the like 1 and 3 minute views.
right. So, however you measure it, very, very pleased, and
It was
great,
amazing.
right, to have a whole community come together like that. Yeah. So we were all happy and onward, as we say. You know, God willing, we'll be able to do it in person next year, but I'm not betting on that yet. You know, we'll see if we can have 700 or 800 people in person under one roof next September. We'll pray and hope for that. But today we're going to do what I hope will be a really meaningful and fun preparation for all of you for what's about to happen on Friday night. I'm going to go through our liturgy with you, kind of identify the themes of each kind of section of our liturgy, sing a little bit for you to identify each section, right? And you can ask questions at any point as we go. So I want to start. You'll notice, I don't know if you can see, but I have a little digital keyboard in front of me. So you're going to have to suffer through a little bit of my my piano skills, which are pretty decent, but this is like a little Tonka toy keyboard. It's not the Kimball, 41 plus pipe organ in the sanctuary. But so I thought I would start with this one setting of a psalm. So for beginning on the first day of the month of Elul, every day through Yom Kippur, the sages added this particular psalm. It's from Psalm 27. And this one verse, the whole psalm appears in the Machzor, the High Holiday Prayer Book. It's also included in our regular Shabbat and weekday prayer book, because every day of the month of Elul we're supposed to add this psalm. And it reads this: Achat sha'alti me'et Adonai, one thing do I ask of God. Right? Ota avakesh. Right? Let me see if I can show you this when I'm looking at it. Give me 1 second. Let's see if it's here. If I can find it for you. Give me just a sec. I'm almost there. They have it in the right place. I'm getting closer. All right, so Psalm 27. Achat sha'alti me'et Adonai. Just one thing have I asked of God. Let me admit Susan here. Welcome, Sue. One thing have I asked of God. Oto avakesh, and only this thing do I seek. Shivti beveit Adonai.
Hi.
One thing have I asked of God. That I might dwell in the house of God. Kol yemei chayai, all the days of my life. Shivti beveit Adonai.
Hi. One thing have I asked of God.
I don't know. Why am I getting an echo, Don? Oh, yeah. If you guys mute yourselves, that'll be better. So mute yourselves for the moment. Then when we have a conversation, we'll unmute you. Lachazot b'noam Adonai, to behold divine sweetness and beauty. Ulevaker behechalo, to gaze in delight at God's temple. So that is the section of the psalm that we recite every day of the month of Elul, including on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Of course, that last phrase resonates for each of us, I'm sure. When we think about being in our gorgeous sanctuary, you know, to gaze in delight at God's temple, that's pretty easy for us, you know, in the confines of Wilshire Boulevard Temple. And there are many, many beautiful musical settings of this. And I'm going to play this one. It's a contemporary setting by a colleague of mine, Cantor Dan Singer, and you'll take a listen. It's very kind of a sweet contemporary setting, and sounds kind of like this. You'll tell me if I'm loud enough for you. Here we go. Sha'alti me'et Adonai, otavakesh, shiviti beveit Adonai, kol yemei chayai, achat sha'alti me'et Adonai, otavakesh, shiviti beveit Adonai, kol yemei chayai. Lachazot b'noam Adonai. Lachazot b'noam ulevaker behechalo. I don't know how well you could hear all that, but yeah, good. So a really lovely setting, because I think it captures the innocence of that request of God. After all, who are we to request anything of God, right? Of course, we do it all the time in our prayers. But this is done with a kind of gentleness, right? Because the thing of that Hebrew, achat sha'alti, I have only one request of you, God, that I might dwell in your house all of my life. And that's it. It's not like clothing, food, peace, none of those things. Just, may I dwell in your house for the rest of my days. Right? So I love that particular setting. Right? So now Normally in a traditional liturgy, that psalm would be chanted after the mourner's Kaddish at the end. So when people leave the synagogue the evening of Rosh Hashanah, they have those words on their lips and in their hearts. Right? And first of all, what is the major theme of the evening of Rosh Hashanah? Really? It comes down to, I think, a couple of things. One is all of Rosh Hashanah is a celebration of life itself. It's the celebration of the creation of the world. Right? Even Yom Kippur morning, we chant 3 times at the end of each of those shofar sections, Hayom Arat Olam, today the world was born. That's one of the notions about Rosh Hashanah, that it is the birthday of the entire world, the creation of the world. So it's a celebration of life itself, the celebration of God's creation, and it is about hearing the sound of the shofar. Basically, those 2 things are the main themes of all of Rosh Hashanah, right? Celebration of life, creation of the world, and we are commanded to lishmoa kol shofar. Not necessarily, if we in the English, to hear the sound of the shofar, but to listen to the sound of the shofar. And the difference there is one can hear without listening. Right? Listening implies that you've both heard it, but you've taken it in. It now has meaning in your mind. And it is that meaning associated with the sounds of the shofar, because what do those blasts require of us, right? That we look inward and begin the process of change and making ourselves better in theological terms to grow closer to God so that we may be inscribed in the book of life. That's really all of Rosh Hashanah. Those are the themes. Celebration of creation of the world. Hearing the sound of the shofar and preparing ourselves and promising to become better in the next year. Right? So those are the umbrella, so to speak, of all of the thought behind all of our prayers, right? Now they get more detailed, of course, in the morning, and we'll get to that in a moment. But first, as we know, every worship service begins officially with play ball. And play ball for us is Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu is play ball, tip off, kick off, all of those things. Right? And so we have learned that the real service begins not until we get to Baruch Hu. Okay? Baruch Hu starts every worship service, and because it does, the melody we sing to Baruch Hu identifies the moment. So in Rosh Hashanah, we have Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. And the congregational response, which is you guys, Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. And suddenly it is Rosh Hashanah when we hear that melody for Baruch Hu. It's the evening of Rosh Hashanah, right? And that particular melody, I think we've mentioned before, dates back to the 14th century. It was originally a Latin hymn text. Talk about cultural borrowing. It's an ancient Latin hymn text titled Iste Confessor. Don't ask me how we've discovered that, but well, I'll tell you. My late professor, Eric Werner, one of the towering ethnomusicologists of the 20th century, made that discovery. And of course, we took that melody and we made it our own. And it became the predominant melody of the evening of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. right? So when we hear that, we know it's the evening of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. That melody continues throughout our liturgy, right? When each of the sections has a blessing at the end of it, a blessing is a specific group of words for us. A blessing is Baruch Atah Adonai, something, something. That is a blessing, technically speaking. We have lots of prayers. They don't all have blessings in them, right? So when we hear those words, Baruch Atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, something, that's a blessing. And when we get to those moments in our services, that melody is attached to that moment, right? Like, Elecha v'kayam, tamidim locha le'olam va'ed, Baruch Atah Adonai, Amariv Aravim. There it is again. Every section of the evening, when there is a blessing, Baruch Atah, ends with that same type of melody, right? That same da 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 da. That's the sound of the evening for the high holidays, right? We get into the Shema. Here's an interesting tradition. In the evening services, when we sing the Shema, the tradition is to sing the second line, Baruch Shem Kavod, in a whisper, so that only we as individuals can hear the response. It's not sung out loud. One night during the whole year, the tradition is Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto is sung in a loud voice, and that's Kol Nidra night. Only one night a year do we sing that second line out loud in a loud voice. Right? So the V'ahavta is chanted as we normally chant it. And then what happens at Micha Mocha, right? Our prayer of redemption. Micha Mocha ba'elim Adonai, Micha Mocha nedar b'kodesh, Nora tehilot osefele. That same melody. So all of our core prayers, right? Baruch Hu, Ahavat Allah, Micha Mocha, the Chasi Kaddish, are all sung in that same melody for evening of high holidays, right? That strengthens the structure of the moment. It strengthens our experience with it, right? After the Micha Mocha, we have our Hashkivenu, right? Our nighttime prayer where we pray to God, right? Keep Satan. Keep Satan. It actually says those words. V'haser Satan milfanenu u'miacharenu. Keep Satan, evil, from putting a stumbling block before us or from following after us. Keep us safe, in other words. And again, when we get to the end of that blessing, right, that same melody comes forth. Baruch Atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom aleinu, ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim. There it is again. Now this year is interesting because, as you know, this Friday night is the first night of Rosh Hashanah. So what happens when the first night of Rosh Hashanah coincides with Shabbat? We add the prayer Vishamru, because Vishamru is the prayer that acknowledges the Shabbat. It's a quote from the Torah. Israel shall keep the Sabbath and celebrate Shabbat for all generations. So even on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, if they fall on Shabbat, Shabbat takes precedence over even the high holidays. And what do we sing for Vishamru? There is really no specific melody for Vishamru when it falls on the high holidays. So we still sing Vishamru in a way in which we would sing it if it were only Shabbat. Okay? But that is included. When Rosh Hashanah does not fall on Shabbat, we don't sing Vishamru. Okay? Then comes the Chatzi Kaddish, which that prayer is really used as a dividing point in all of our prayer services, right? And on the evening of Rosh Hashanah, again, it takes in the melody of Rosh Hashanah. Yitkada v'yitkada Shema Rabbah be'alma divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dichol Beit Yisrael. Here it comes. Bagala uvizman kariv v'imeru amen. Yehi Shema Rabbah mevarach le'alam u'lalmei almaya yitbarach. There's the Chatzi Kaddish when it's evening of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, right? Do you remember in your minds what it sounds like on a normal Friday night? Right? Can you think of it, right? Yeah. Yitkada v'yitkada Shema Rabbah. Shabbat. High holidays. It sounds like high holidays. Beautiful. Then we have the Amidah, which traditionally is done silently. Okay? But at Wilshire Boulevard Temple, when we do sing the beginning of it out loud, on Rosh Hashanah, it sounds completely different than Shabbat, like this. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avoteinu ve'imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak ve'Elohei Yaakov. That's what it sounds like for evening and morning, the Amidah, right? Then we have an insert into the Amidah. The first one is Zochrenu, right? Because we describe God as, and asking God to please remember us for life, God, in the new year. Zochrenu, L'chaim, right? So a little bit of Hebrew. Our memorial service we refer to as Yizkor, right? And those three letters, Chaf, Resh, Zayin, Chaf, Resh. Those three letters mean memory, to remember. So Zochrenu, L'chaim, means we shall remember, or please remember us for life, right? And we all know different melodies that are familiar. We have Zochrenu L'chaim Melech Hafetz B'chaim V'chodvenu B'sefer HaChaim Lema'ancha Elohim Chaim. Sound familiar? It better. And that traditionally is a melody for the morning, because traditionally we don't sing the Amidah out loud in the evening. But in many Reformed congregations we do. So how do we end the blessing? The blessing is chanted in this morning melody. Melech Ozer u'Moshia u'Magen Baruch Atah Adonai. Right? And then the ending. Mechaye HaKol Amen. That response, we call it in musical terms a descending minor triad. That may not mean anything to anyone, but when we hear Amen, that is the sound of the morning for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, right? All of our blessings, Baruch Atah Adonai, in a morning service, they all end with that familiar three notes, right? So these are all the building blocks for you when you're watching Friday night and this Shabbat morning for Rosh Hashanah. You're going to hear those over and over again, which means it's intended for you to participate, right? So we have secretly put recording microphones in all of your computers, and we're going to record you to make sure that we know that you're singing along with me, right? All right, so that's the Amidah. And in the evening service, the rest of it, we pray silently, okay? And of course, we add into our liturgy those prayers that are unique to the high holidays, okay? And in a traditional synagogue, we would sing the Kiddush towards the end of the service. But at Wilshire Boulevard Temple, we do that at the beginning of the service, right? So here's how Kiddush sounds on Rosh Hashanah. Just to refresh your memory for Friday night. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. All familiar, right? On Rosh Hashanah, and even on the festivals like the evening of Sukkot or Shmini Atzeret or Passover, has a different sound. So here's what it sounds a little bit like on Rosh Hashanah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Here's the important part. Asher bachar banu mikol am v'romemanu mikol hashon v'kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'titen lanu Adonai Eloheinu be'ava et yom etzikaron haShabbat hazeh. Then we have to announce it's the day of remembrance. Yom Zikron, and then the shofar blast. Tirov Mikara Kodesh, Zecher Zecher Litziat Mitzrayim. So, it's a much more dramatic Kiddush on Rosh Hashanah, and it has in it a few of the melodic themes of Rosh Hashanah. Some settings might include Kivanu v'acharta v'yotanu kidashta mikol amim, so on and so forth, right? So Kiddush and Erev Rosh Hashanah is special because it's Rosh Hashanah. And this year, we include both the words for Shabbat and Rosh Hashanah, right? So that takes us through the structure of our evening service of Rosh Hashanah, the themes, and the melody, the music that's associated with it all. Now, you can unmute yourselves if you have any questions or comments, and then we'll move on to some of the morning stuff. Yes, Merle.
No, I was just unmuting myself. I'm finding this fascinating because a lot of it they don't do here.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, when you watch Friday night, you're gonna hear all of it. I promise.
No, I'm watching Wilshire, so that's
right. No, you're gonna hear it. You're gonna hear it in our service this Friday night, right?
I haven't heard it in years, so I'm looking forward to it.
There it is, right? There it is, and you'll get to see it in beautiful living color on all of your high definition computers. Right?
On my TV.
That's right.
On my smart TV.
Absolutely.
A smart TV running.
Right.
Are you going to give us the page numbers?
We will not be referring to pages because we're going to have the texts on your screen for a lot of it.
Yeah, and actually this afternoon, hopefully this afternoon, we're going to be sending out a edited Machzor that corresponds to the service that is.
God bless you, Don Levy. I'm so happy you're on this broadcast.
Okay, so Don, are you going to just have the Hebrew there too? Because I'm like learning it, so I want to try to.
I am almost certain it is the Mishkan HaNefesh. And
so you'll have Hebrew and transliteration.
I have it. Yeah, I have it.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah, I have.
But we've edited it, so it'll just be the relevant pages for that correspond to the service that you'll be seeing.
Perfect.
Exactly
Perfect.
right.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great
That's good.
question.
Yeah.
I think it's very helpful, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, so let's move on to our morning service. There are really, again, two basic themes to Rosh Hashanah morning, okay? You know, of course, in addition to the overall themes of creation of the world and celebration, now we have really Avinu Malkeinu, right? That God is our sovereign ruler, and God is also a God who remembers us with mercy, right? And the shofar again reminds us to turn inward, to prepare both for the next year, but also for the world to come, redemption. Right? And those are the three main sections of our morning liturgy. We've discussed them before. Malchuyot, kingship of God. Zichronot, God is a merciful God who remembers us with kindness. And shofarot, the service for the sounding of the shofar, God's everlasting redemption. Okay? And it's interesting, what the sages chose for the Torah reading is, in fact, Akedat Yitzchak, the binding or the near sacrifice of Isaac, right? And the sages thought that, consider this to be really the foundation for the notion that God is a God of kindness and mercy for having spared Isaac, right? And that is especially the middle section of our prayer service, the Zichronot. Yes, Susan, ask a question.
Well, it doesn't it also, I always think that it reminds us that we have to be true and loyal to God because Abraham had faith. So that I thought that might be one of the reasons that we read it, because it emphasizes the notion of faith.
There's
in
no
God.
question about that, without a doubt, that that Abraham followed God's commands all the way down to take your son, your only son, the son whom you love, and offer him to me as a sacrifice. Yeah, right? And because he showed such faith, for us, not without problems, right? God rewards Abraham and the Jewish people and sacrifice and replaces Isaac with the ram, hence the horn from the ram as the shofar. So you're exactly right. All of this finds its origin and foundation in that moment in the Torah, for lots of additional reasons to those. Those are the fundamental ones. And the sages, as well as contemporary thinkers, have a great deal of conflict with that notion. I will tell you that some of the midrashim, the ancient rabbinic stories, in some of them, Abraham actually does sacrifice Isaac. Okay? So you should know the origins of the sacrifice, right, of Jesus. It comes from someplace, right? The origins are in the Torah. Okay? Right? In fact, the words Christos, right? Jesu Christos. That means the Christ means the anointed one. Right? This is from the Torah, the Messiah, the Mashiach, right? Is Hebrew for the anointed one. And Christos is the Latin and Greek for the Messiah. So this whole notion of sacrificing oneself to God is in this case is of the origin is in the Torah itself. Right? So that's a whole other world to get into, the world of the Midrash and what they have to say about all this stuff, right? So those are the main themes for the morning, right? Birthday of the world, creation, the sacrifice, and we are the beneficiaries forever because of Abraham's act of pure faith, right? And then it's divided up, our notions of God, into those three sections of God as King, God is a merciful God, and the redemption of the Jewish people, right? Throughout it all, as we mentioned before, that concluding cadence of every blessing, Amen, that is the key figure for the morning service. We hear that over and over and over again, right? And that really is the substance, both in terms of liturgy and theology, of Rosh Hashanah morning, right? With one important one to include. We touched upon this a few weeks ago, but the Alenu Prayer was first written and inserted into our liturgy originally in the Rosh Hashanah morning service. It was inserted to begin the section of God as King, Malchuyot. Think about that word, Malchuyot. What are the three important letters? Mem, Lamed, Chaf, as in the word Melech. David, Melech Israel. David, King of Israel. Malchuyot, meaning the verses of kingship. Okay? So, Alenu is written and inserted to begin this section of the liturgy. What does Alenu say? We bow, we praise the King, the one and only King. And at the end, what do we all do? Va'anachnu koreim. We bend and we fall. We bow down to the ground in the presence of the King of Kings. Right? And on Rosh Hashanah, it has a very specific melody attached to it. So when we hear these three notes, we know we're dealing with the kingship of God. Here it is. Alenu. In those three notes, just like when we hear Amen, it's Rosh Hashanah morning. When we hear these, Alenu, it's the kingship of God. L'shabeach l'adon hakol. Then that passage happens again. Latet kidola liotse bereshit. And then again at the end. When you watch, you'll see, of course, me bow to those words, va'anachnu, and we, koreim, we fall. Umishtachavim, and we go all the way down to the floor. Va'anachnu koreim, umishtachavim, umodim. And then we rise before the King. Lifnei melech, lifnei melech, lifnei melech malchei hamlachim. We rise before the King of Kings, the Holy One. He is holy. HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So that whole sequence of melody. Ba da da ba 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 ba. God is King. Just like that. And here's what knowledgeable cantors do and have done over the centuries. Let's say there's a moment in the evening service, right? Let's say in the Kiddush for Erev Rosh Hashanah, when there are a few phrases that mention God as King, right? A cantor might sing those phrases, even in the evening service, and use that motif. Like this. Yom Zichron Teruach Be'ahava Mikra Kodesh. That's a quote from the Alenu. Because in the Kiddush, again, we have this refrain, right? Melech al kol haaretz, right? God is king. So where an idea about the kingship of God appears, whether it's in the morning or the evening, right? We use that motif. It's a musical structural device, right? Ah, God is king. God is king.
So Don,
Yeah.
when does the cantor lie down on the ground before the Torah? Because I have seen that.
Absolutely. The tradition is, quite honestly, when we get to the end of Alenu,
Right.
Anachnu Korim, in a traditional shul, you would see not only the chazan, but anybody else on the bima or anyone else who has room near their seats. The idea is, at least on the bima for the chazan, the prayer leader, to fall all the way down to the ground, spread out completely flat on the ground. And then those standing near the chazan would help the cantor back to their feet.
So that's
I
just
never realized that before.
Yeah.
so
Well,
that's just tradition that a cantor decides. I mean, I saw Nate Lamb do it,
yes.
and the first time I saw it, I was shocked.
Yeah.
And we do it here. I mean, not all of us do it here, but
Right.
the rabbis, the cantor, and quite a few congregants do it here.
Well, what
And when
we
they-
do is we bend our knees and we bend over, right?
Right.
But what Bill is referring to is even more dramatic, where we actually lie down completely, like on a bed, on the bima.
No, we
Because-
have people here that do it, including our clergy.
Okay, so Venoflim al Panehem. By the way, so on Yom Kippur, I'll just jump ahead a little bit. In the section of the service where we retell the biblical description of what went on in the Holy of Holies on the day of Yom Kippur, right? And we sing certain texts like Kohanim, which retells the ritual of the high priest on the day of Yom Kippur. Instead of Anachnu Korim and they fell, here it's Venoflim al Panehem, and they fell on their faces all the way down to the ground. That's where that tradition comes from. And if you go to any traditional synagogue on Yom Kippur and on Rosh Hashanah, you will see the chazan and or rabbi completely flat on the ground. Right? So you've never seen that particular thing at Wilshire Boulevard Temple.
No, I've never seen anybody pick up the cantor, or anyone else for that matter.
Yeah, I've been meaning to mention that to the Board of Trustees. I'm a little...
Hey, Bill, go help him next
No
time.
one comes to help me.
I just never had heard of that before.
It's true. I think that, in the early stages of the Reform movement, certainly in America,
Yeah.
there was a very concerted effort to remove from the worship such a kind of what they would deem to be, hocus pocus magic stuff, right? And so they removed those kinds of things, choreography that they found to be either too Jewish, too crazy, too meaningless, whatever, right?
Too old world. Didn't they want to fit in more?
Well, yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
to America, right? In a lot of those early, classical Reform congregations, they put up a sukkah in the sanctuary
Really?
on the bima. Yes.
Never saw that either.
Yeah, I would imagine, Bill, maybe you know this, in the earlier days at Wilshire, did they ever have a sukkah in the sanctuary?
No, not that I can remember.
Probably because it was the sukkah itself was too
Yeah,
kind
there was a sukkah out on the patio.
did they have one to begin with?
Yeah, they did, out on the patio,
I will tell you,
on the courtyard area.
In my previous congregation, Rodolph Sholem in Manhattan, when I first came there, this is now what, 28 years ago, they had a sukkah on the bima. Now they had one
Wow.
outside too, right? But it was, I think they thought of it just as a kind of symbolic, decoration. But again, the bowing and all those kinds of things, the early reformers really wanted to get rid of a lot of that stuff, right?
Well, it's like
In those
I
same
remember-
congregations, they got rid of the blowing of the shofar.
really.
Absolutely. It was replaced in many classical Reformed temples, being played on the organ.
Oh, we never had that at Wilshire.
No.
But I do remember
a lot
when
of those early
when
places did. It was too like, you're going to blow an animal horn, like that's not happening, right?
no, we never had but I remember when Harvey started restarted the Torah Hakafah, and my mother's friends, they were probably in their 70s then. These women were absolutely having a nervous breakdown. That, what is this running around the sanctuary with a Torah and everybody's kissing the Torah? So that was something that he brought back.
That is
that
fascinating.
People were literally freaked out about it. And I was already used to it from here. So that was a piece that, people looked at me like, what do you mean they do that where you come from?
Right. Yeah. I did not know that. Thank you for sharing that with me.
Anytime.
I've never been in a synagogue in my lifetime that doesn't do that, right?
They didn't.
It speaks to the power of custom. And if it's not your custom, it is weird, right? If it is your custom, for it not to happen would be so upsetting. Like, how can you not take the Torah around the congregation? What's wrong with you, right?
Well, it's like, it's like when I walked in there one Saturday morning with a tallis on, and some man came up to me and said, we don't do that here.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I do.
Good for you.
I don't know what else to say to him.
It was not that long ago when wearing a yarmulke in the temple was not only frowned upon, but, pretty much made impossible, right?
Yeah.
So, customs change, but they change very slowly sometimes, right? So
A lot of times we used to travel around the holidays because it's a good time of year to travel. And we've been to services in Budapest, we've been in Cape Town, we've been, but I said to Tom, I'm not happy doing this because it's not like Wilshire Boulevard Temple. I want to be home on the holidays because, well, number one, I want to be in the synagogue, but that's for another year. But I want to have that experience, that music, that choir, that organ. It's not the same without it.
Yeah, you speak right to the heart of the issue, Sue, because I think for us, especially on the high holidays, these customs, these rituals, all of it really lives in a deep place within each of us, and we need that. We need being home, and all that means for us, right? That's really powerfully important for us. Yeah. So to go forward in the morning, that Alenu prayer. So now Alenu first became in our prayer services on Rosh Hashanah to attest to the unchallenged kingship of God before whom we bow. Okay. Then comes those three sections we talked about. God is king, God is merciful, God as the Redeemer. Okay, those three main sections, at the end of which, of each of those sections, we blow the shofar, right? After each of those sections, right? Traditionally, each section of the blowing has different combinations of the calls, right? And after each one, we sing those two prayers. Areshet Sifatenu Yerav Lefanecha El Ram Venisa. It's interesting that the melodies established a long time ago that we still sing, all of them for Areshet Sifatenu, And the next text, which appears in a traditional prayer book, Hayom Arat Olam, they're almost always sung in this kind of Hasidic tune that people can join in on. And I truly believe that that tradition evolved out of a sense of understanding the moment, right? That after all these long, drawn-out recitations of verses from the Torah and the prophets for each of those sections, prayer leaders understood, we have to sing something here that's involves the congregation, that has joy and spirit in it, right? And I believe that's how those melodies, types of melodies, became attached to those prayers in those moments, right? And so we sing them that way to this very day, right? And again, the Torah reading, traditionally, it's interesting, the first, since traditional Judaism has 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, not one as Reformed Judaism had from its beginning, right? Another thing that they eliminated was 2 days of major holidays. Rosh Hashanah, Passover, Sukkot, Shavuot. One day was plenty, right? But there was a problem, especially when it comes to Rosh Hashanah, because traditionally, you would have 2 days. In the traditional Torah reading, we read the Akedah, the Binding of Isaac section, the second day of Rosh Hashanah, not the first. So what did the early reformers do? They had to change that. Can't have Rosh Hashanah without reading the Binding of Isaac, right? So they changed the tradition, and they made the reading of that section the first, and for them, only day of Rosh Hashanah. So what happens now in Reformed congregations, now that we have 2 days, we've addressed the situation this way. We read the Binding of Isaac the first day, and Reformed Jews of our own time decided, well, since the theme again is about the creation of the world on Rosh Hashanah, let's read from the beginning of the Torah, the 7 days of creation, right? So for us, on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, we read from Bereshit, in the beginning God began to create the world, and the first day, the Binding of Isaac, right? In a traditional synagogue, they don't read from the creation, the beginning of Genesis at all. The first day is the section that precedes the Binding of Isaac, and the second day is the Binding of Isaac. Now, they probably did that. They probably had some smart marketing executive who said, wait, if you give them the Akedah on the first day, who's coming for the second day, right? So hold off on that. Give them the free hamburgers day 2, first day, right? But that's how our tradition has evolved, right? So when you tune in for second day of Rosh Hashanah, which, by the way, we filmed on the outdoor patio at the Irma's campus, right? So when you see us, we'll be outdoors, right? And you'll hear the beginning of Bereshit chanted, right?
So,
yeah.
So what happens on Simchas Torah? Do you read more of Bereshit?
What happens on Simchat Torah itself, the tradition is to read the end of the Torah,
right?
And without stopping, start again.
So you still
Bereshit.
do. Okay, so you do it over again. Okay.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Don, are you going to have any of the kids?
Go ahead, Sue.
Are you going to have any of the kids chanting Torah, or are you doing all of it?
Well, on high holidays, because of the platform, we're only chanting like one Torah portion on Rosh Hashanah, one Torah portion on Yom Kippur, just because we felt that it gets very long. You know, our attention span on Zoom, on a computer, is not what it is in person. So
I'm just thinking of when you
4
had
or 5
the
Torah portions, we limited it.
okay.
And in this case, I think on Rosh Hashanah, I'm chanting Torah the second day. I think Rabbi Ben Naim is chanting on Yom Kippur. I think Cantor Picot is chanting the first day. You know, all of those were all challenges. You asked about challenges, Merle, like, right? Here, these are some of them. How do we make decisions about how much of our liturgy do we present in this format? How much music? How much text? What do we cut out that doesn't work unless it's in person? Like you mentioned before, Erev Rosh Hashanah, we have this magnificent, glorious beginning where we process in with the Torah scrolls. How do you do that on the computer? It doesn't work. We have a touch of it, right? A fanfare, some music, but normally, and when we walk around with the Torah scrolls in the Torah services on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, that's 12 to 15 minutes.
At least, yes.
It takes us a long time, right?
And everybody schmoozes.
Well, exactly. And by the way, it's so wonderful. I love that part of the service, mostly because it gives me some vocal rest. But, truthfully, that's just a fabulous moment for the community. We just can't do it this year. So we really had to make a lot of hard choices about how much to include, what to remove, all those kinds of things. And at the end of the day, I think, we've put a lot of time, countless hours making those decisions and editing and all that. And I think for the most part, it'll work well. I'm sure for some people, certain things that we had to, cut, will be missed for sure, but those were really challenging times for us to make those decisions as a clergy team. But and of course everybody has to do that. So those are the themes. Erev Rosh Hashanah morning. Those are the melodic themes that you hear over and over. Yom Kippur morning again. Instead of those three sections of the kingship of God and God remembers us and the shofar, on Yom Kippur, all of that is replaced with the avodah service. And the term avodah does mean prayer, literally, but it's a retelling of the ancient practice within the ancient temple on the day of Yom Kippur, led by the high priest, right? First, the priest would atone for his and his family's sins, and then the sins of the community, and the sins then finally of all Jews throughout the world. So that's the focus of the morning of Yom Kippur. It is the confessional, right? The vidui, right? The confession of sins, right? Ashamnu, v'yal kulam, right? And then the actual representation of what went on in the ancient temple. Now, in our Wilshire Boulevard Temple High Holiday Prayer Book, we really don't have that particular part of the liturgy. We have the confessional, but not the representation of the ancient temple service describing the high priest making the confession and then entering the Holy of Holies. This is powerful theatrical stuff, right? Where he would enter the Holy of Holies dressed in special robes. They would tie a rope around his ankle for fear that if he had to be rescued, they could pull him out, right? I read years ago a wonderful modern midrash, a version of this, which likened the Holy of Holies. In Hebrew, it's called Kodesh Kodashim, the Holy of Holies. Only one day a year and only one human being could enter the Holy of Holies, and that was the high priest, the Kohen Gadol, and to pronounce the unpronounceable name of God. And in this midrash, this writer likened the entering the Holy of Holies to entering the core of a nuclear reactor. Immense power beyond the imagination. God help us all if something goes wrong. You program the computer incorrectly. The high priest says the wrong prayer, mispronounces a word. That's the kind of power it held for them in the imagination, right? And this is also where the term scapegoat originates, right? Scapegoat. The high priest, the community, would send out a ram into the wilderness, carrying all the sins of the people with it, right? So that whole section was pretty much removed from the early Reform prayer book. In the new one that, God willing, we'll use in person next year, it's back in the Machzor, of course, in a more kind of contemporarized version of it, but it is there, right? And for musical purposes, the main text of that is a text called Kohanim, and it describes what the priests, the Kohanim, would do. And at the end of that, they would fall upon their faces. And here's the melody that is unique to that section of the service that talks about the Kohanim. Kohanim, those notes. Ba-da-da-da-dum. Those couple of notes. Ya-da-da. Like the melodies we sing in the evening. Ba-da-da-da-da-da. That is the melody of the Kohanim. And when you hear it, it rings a bell, so to speak. Ah, the Kohanim, the ancient priests. Right? One great cantor of the 19th century, in Russia, he sets the Alenu Prayer that introduces the confessional section, and instead of singing Alenu, right, he writes it really for Yom Kippur, and he starts it this way, just like the Kohanim, Alenu, right? Kohanim l'shabeach, which is recalling the Ashamnu melody, right? Ashamnu, ay, 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 ay. All of that is in his Alenu. Alenu, like Ashamanu, l'shabeach. Right? So these are musical cues that attach us to these ideas. So that's Alenu and Yom Kippur, right? Then the Vidui, and we just sang the Ashamnu melody, right? Which we all do. We all know that the confessional texts are all in the plural. We have sinned. And then to describe all of those sins. We. If one of us sins, we all sin. Because we are woven together as a community. It's like COVID. Okay? You refuse to wear a mask? Okay? You endanger the lives of all human beings. And in fact, you have sinned. Right? That is the notion here. And that's the special melody attached to it. And of course, just to go back for a moment to Kol Nidre night, Kol Nidre and that whole section is not part of the official evening service for Yom Kippur. That section, including Kol Nidre, gets added much later in our history. The Kol Nidre text originally dates back as far as the 4th or 5th century BCE. Hold on to your hats and seats, okay? I think we talked about this some weeks ago too in Music Matters, and that is that in archaeological digs in Syria, they discovered bowls, magical bowls, under the houses of Jews. And on those bowls were written the words, Kol Nidre va'esareh. This blew the minds of Jewish scholars because they thought the Kol Nidre prayer was first instituted and written sometime in like the 12th century of the Common Era. In fact, it was 800 years before. The ancients in Syria and other Middle Eastern countries believed fervently in the power of magic and magical blessings and curses. And they would put those bowls under their homes to block curses from entering their homes. All these curses, may they be null and void. Fast forward 800 years, right? And we see the first versions of this prayer being included in some of our high holiday prayers, right? But I have to tell you, it met with, from time to time, with great opposition. Many communities throughout Europe, especially in the Western Europe, felt very uncomfortable with that notion. In its magical purposes, but even later in what it implied and how it made the Jews look to the dominant culture in society. If you go to Germany in the 19th century, there was great debate, and for a while they removed it from the High Holiday Machzor. Can you imagine? No Kol Nidre on the evening of Yom Kippur. Why? Because it was used as a violent polemic against the Jews. Look at the Jews. On their holiest night of the year, they say out loud and open, all the promises I make for the coming year are null and void. The Jews, even in their holiest day, they say out loud, none of my promises are worth anything. And there was a great problem for the Jews living in those cities at that time. And so they removed it from the prayer book itself. And truthfully, it was the power of that melody of Kol Nidre that forced those communities to eventually bring it back into the Machzor. In the interim, some communities decided to sing a different text. In some places, they sang a German text to the Kol Nidre melody. Believe it or not. But over time, the text was reinstated. It was reimagined as, even some of the Aramaic words of Kol Nidre were changed to refer to not the coming year, right, but to the year behind us. May we be forgiven for the promise we made this past year and didn't live up to. And truthfully, that's really the only difference in the evening service from Yom Kippur to Rosh Hashanah. That is this preamble section, Kol Nidre, right? And the few sections that come right after Kol Nidre. From that point on, same as Yom Kippur, as Rosh Hashanah, core prayers, Baruch Hu, Ahavat Olam, Mi Chamocha. One small difference, on the evening of Rosh Hashanah, we have this prayer, Tiku V'Chodesh. It's a quote from the Torah. Sound the shofar on Rosh Hashanah, right? Now, there is no such command for Yom Kippur, right? So they replaced it with another quote from the Torah, Ki vayom hazeh, on this day, we atone for our sins, Yikaper aleichem, right? That's the one liturgical difference. And in addition to, of course, we do not recite Kiddush on Kol Nidre night. We light candles, but we do not say Kiddush, of course, because it's already Yom Kippur. You don't make a blessing over something you're not going to do, like drink wine or challah, right? But those are the only differences in the evening liturgy for those two holidays that we sing aloud. Right? And the last section I want to touch on with everyone is the Ne'ilah service, right? Ne'ilah. Ne'ilah means to close, right? And specifically, the imagination is Ne'ilat Sha'ar, to close the gates of heaven. Right? The imagery is very interesting and compelling, that the gates of forgiveness, the gates of repentance, the gates of heaven are open until, right? Some traditions say at the end of Ne'ilah, at sundown. Other traditions say you have until the end of Sukkot to atone for your sins. Some say until March 15th, tax day, right? But the melodies, the nusach, that beautiful Hebrew word which means patterns of melody, that introduces Ne'ilah, a very simple, kind of plaintive, repeated melody, right? And we start the Ne'ilah service with the Kaddish, because the Kaddish prayer marks the end of the service that comes before it and introduces the new section. So like Baruch Hu, which introduces the melody of the moment, in some places the Chatzi Kaddish takes that role. And how does it begin for Ne'ilah? Yitkadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah. That tells you right away, it's Ne'ilah. That's the only place we sing the Kaddish like that. Then comes this melody. Be'alma divrach yirutei. That you hear in the evening, right? When you hear ba da 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 da, right? And then we hear it in the repetition of the Amidah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei avoteinu v'imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov. That melody repeats itself throughout the Ne'ilah service. And it has this beautiful kind of plaintive, tired, moaning quality about it, right? And you hear that melody throughout Ne'ilah text. We have like, Petach lanu sha'ar. Please open the gates for us at this closing moment of the day, right? Beautiful stuff, right? The sun is setting. It's our last chance, right? And then at the very end of Ne'ilah, we have this powerful liturgical custom of reciting the Shema and the Baruch Shem 3 times, and then these 3 words 7 times. So the Shema once, Baruch Shem Kavod 3 times, and then Adonai Hu HaElohim, as if to say, God, you are God. Right? And that we repeat 7 times. That's the tradition. Right? And then we basically go right into the evening service, right? And we finish up. But dramatic theater all throughout the high holidays, from the excitement and the joy and the celebration, the celebratory nature of Rosh Hashanah, the birth of the world. We rejoice in creation. And God remembers us as a merciful, forgiving God. And God is king. And the shofar announces, in some traditions, the coming of the Messiah. Right? And then Yom Kippur. It's all about confession, right? We plead for forgiveness. We confess our sins, right? And we beg to be written in the book of life. One interesting liturgical moment on Rosh Hashanah, in that text, B'Sefer Chaim, remember us for life, bracha ushalom, for blessing and for peace in the new year ahead. Right? And inscribe us, write us in the book of life. On Rosh Hashanah, we say, V'chotvenu b'sefer hachayim, which means write us. Kotev is the word to write in Hebrew. Ani kotev. If you're a woman, ani kotevet. When we say we, please write us, v'chotvenu. That's the plural, right? On Yom Kippur, we don't ask for God to write us in the book any longer. We ask for our names to be sealed, finalized in the book of life. So the word changes from v'chotvenu to v'chotmenu. Sounds similar. V'chotmenu means to be enclosed, to be sealed. There's a finality to that word. Because on Yom Kippur, please, now that we prayed on Rosh Hashanah that you would write our names, now please seal it and close that book. Right? So you will hear when you're listening to the Ne'ilah service and I sing those words, I make a distinct point. When I get to V'chotmenu. So there's no doubt about what we're asking for here, right? And what a journey all of that is. As I'm going through all of this with you now, a certain kind of, I won't dwell on this for long, a certain kind of yearning and emptiness is filling me because I'm really realizing now that we're not going to be together in our sanctuary. And there is no replacement for that. There really isn't. And while at the same time, you know, all of us have worked just tirelessly to make this as beautiful and as meaningful an experience for all of us in our community. And I think we'll achieve that. It's finally just hitting me, really, that because my mind's been on just, hey, let's create this. Let's do it. Make it beautiful. Now it's hitting me that, oh my goodness, I'm going to be in my living room on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Right? But I'll put that off for as long as I can. Right? But this is our journey together, right? And so, as we say, standing on one foot, you know, we've taken a brief journey through all of those moments together, and what to look for in terms of the themes and the melodies and what we're going to be confronted with in all of those moments, right? So I say to each and every one of you, Shana Tova Umetuka, may you have a beautiful and sweet new year. May it be a healthy new year, right? It's pretty clear what we pray for, right? For this year, right? And may we go on together, right? We're already working on services for Sukkot and Simchat Torah and all the B'nai Mitzvah that are coming down the road. So, but this is a good time to pause and count our blessings. So that's what I hope for each and every one of you. And in a joking way, but I mean it seriously, I can't wait for you to see all of us. Right? So we have time for some comments and questions, and then we'll say goodbye. Anyone, comment, question?
No, thank you. It was a great session, great series. I got to tell you that this was very informative. But the first Music Matters might have been the best.
What was that first one? I can't remember now, Bill.
The old cantors from the 1800s.
Oh,
yeah.
That was the most stirring session. Now, Gideon was great. Gideon was great.
Yeah, it was great.
All of them were great. But
They've all been great.
If you could do that again with some of that.
I got to tell you, I definitely plan on that because there are many more. You know, I think I went through maybe, 6 or 7 of them. There are many.
Okay. I got to run because Susan needs Zoom. So I'm going to sign off.
Very good.
So I have to ask, how long is the service?
You know what? Man,
What
I'll
was?
tell you.
It's okay, Ann, you can knit during the service.
Tell
It's
you
okay.
something, you know, that is.
You're home. No one will
that is
see
a
you.
You can eat.
All joking aside, that's a profoundly important question. And let me tell you, that was the guiding thought and decision we had to make early on to prepare all of these high holiday services. So just to say, when we were all thrown into this pandemic, back in March, we realized, guys, we can't go to the temple anymore. We're going to somehow doing these things at home on computer. We didn't know what we were doing. All right, let's just do it. So we did our Friday night services the way we always do them, which are about an hour and 15 minutes long. And we realized after about, 3 weeks, guys, we can't keep doing our services like this. It's so boring to sit in front of your computer for an hour and 15 minutes. And after about 4, 5, 6 weeks, we really we went through the prayer service just like we did for high holidays this summer and said, look, we got to make it shorter. We got to just touch on highlights so that it moves along, so that it's engaging in this way. So we went from about an hour and 15 minutes to 45 minutes. No kidding. Sometimes even 40 minutes for Friday night. And we learned a lot from that. Obviously, our video got better, our sound quality got better. We started using, pre-recorded musical tracks and all that, blah, blah, blah. But we learned a lot from that whole experience about how to approach high holidays. Because normally, in the sanctuary, our Rosh Hashanah evening services are about an hour and 35 to 40 minutes. The morning services are 2 hours. Kol Nidra night is 2 hours. Yom Kippur morning, 2 hours and 10 minutes. We realized we cannot do that. Our people are just not going to sit and listen. So that's how we started from there. We're going to try to, here's how much time we're going to give ourselves. And now we're going to make the liturgy and whatever else we do fit into that time. If we go over by 5 minutes, fine. It's okay. I love that.
I have to say, Don.
So Nan, by the way, so that was our first important question, right? How long do we think these services should be, right? And we really had to pay attention to that. And I will tell you, you asked earlier, the challenges, those were even bigger challenges for us on high holidays because we had to leave out really certain prayers and certain melodies and certain texts that we know people are going to be, pardon my language, really pissed off about, but we just had no choice. You're muted, Nan. Unmute yourself.
Thank you. Did you cut out some responsive reading?
We had to. Responsive reading on Zoom is like death because nobody can hear each other, right? So it just doesn't work. So that was a big, big thing for us. Like guys realized you can't do responsive readings on Zoom, right? So we had to really tighten things up, right? Make transitions tighter and all those kinds of things. And
what did you cut out that was most problematic for you?
For me, I will tell you, we're basically doing no pieces of music in those three main sections of Malchiot, Zichronot, and Shofrot. Those probably don't really matter that much to me personally as a cantor because we're doing Alenu, but nothing in the rest of those sections. Let me think of anything. We cut out Kol Nidra night. We cut out those two pieces that happen right after Kol Nidre, Vayomer Adonai, which are, I think important moments to some people. There was another challenge because of COVID. When we filmed the services, we could only have a certain number of people in the sanctuary to actually do the filming. We had the camera crew. They were just, on the floor of the sanctuary and far away from us. But on the bima, we were only allowed to have 5 clergy people at any one time. And you'll see when you see the film where we have each our own amud. No one's at the amud. We don't share an amud, even if we're not there at the same time. There are 5 amuds. Each of us is spaced far apart from each other, and that's how we conduct the whole service. So that means for certain services, you'll only see 3 of our rabbis on the bima. For certain services, you will not see Rabbi Leader on the bima. Now, in person, it's kind of like that too, because we have so many services going on at the temple that we have different rabbis officiating at different venues at the same time. But here it'll be very noticeable, right?
So did you amalgamate the nefesh or whatever, that service with the regular, very prescribed service?
We definitely tried to do that, in particular in the morning services. And our sense was that, that for our evening service in the high holidays, which, by the way, are our best attended services, both Rosh Hashanah and Kol Nidre night, and it's pretty much 90% an adult congregation for those, we left our evening services pretty much musically and otherwise the way they happen in person. The morning services, where we do offer and have offered more family-oriented services and the Nefesh, now the Kolenu service. So I think you'll see a lot more of that reflected in our 2 morning services with some video and some different kinds of music and all that. All right, so evening, I think, for the most part, a more traditional approach for Wilshire Boulevard Temple. In the morning, more kind of family-oriented style.
And you said you cut out Kol Nidre night? What'd you just say?
No. For the 2 prayers that happen right after we sing Kol Nidre,
Notice he does a lot of singing the melodies for the high holidays and how they're different.
We had to cut those for another reason, by the way. And I think, we'll end with this part of it. The other challenge for me, obviously, our choir and organ are primary musical sources in our worship on the high holidays in our sanctuary. However, because of those restrictions, you'll see Bill was up in the choir loft playing. However, could not have my choir, especially, singing indoors in close proximity, not happening, right? So what we did do, we took the recording that we made of in the sanctuary of Bill's organ playing, took that to a recording studio with only 5 of my singers. They were each in their own plexiglass bubble, and recorded probably about 8 to 10 of our really, core choir liturgy, right? Recorded it there. Some of them, because of the nature of the piece, we couldn't even record there. So we took another afternoon, went back in the sanctuary, okay, and had Bill there as well. And we placed the singers in different places in the sanctuary with our own microphones to record, surrounded by plexiglass, and recorded those pieces in the sanctuary. But, it's a tedious process. So a number of choral pieces where they sing on it, we just couldn't do. So, time-wise, and also even in terms of they make the service, it just added a lot of time. So that was a challenge. We were not able to record a number of our wonderful young people who sing with me, on the bima, because we just couldn't do it. It wasn't allowed. And we got some of them to pre-record things, which you'll see, like in little, video boxes for certain prayers. But there was only a certain amount that we could do, both because that takes a lot of time and coordinating and then editing. Could never do it all together at the same time, at the same place. So those were all challenges. We did, I think, at the end of the day, we did as well as we could.
Okay, so since it's all a done deal, canned in the can and ready to go, and you're not tearing your hair out, you're not spending untold times practicing, as the historian, I would like to ask you to start writing what you just said. Give me a history of the challenges and how you resolve them, and from your point of view. So
that's a great idea, Nan.
I can start building a file or a resource for this period of time. So I know you got the time right now to do it, and it's fresh in your mind.
You know, man, boy, I wish that were true. Can I tell you, all of us now, we find ourselves busier. Even forget about, obviously, we're not going to be doing the services again for high holidays, but because we're home, because we're on Zoom, and we are doing more things now, more hours of actual like work, temple work, than we did before COVID. I'm not kidding. None of us have taken like a day off. We're always working because we're reachable, right? Well, you can be on your computer. Yeah, so that aside, the idea is a great idea. And I'm excited to do that, right?
I would really appreciate it. And I'm going to ask others to do as well.
Yeah, I would make that suggestion to the clergy, to the senior staff.
It's a story, and we can do a serial in the bulletin.
Right.
You know, I mean, we could really, but more than that, I really want it for the archives. This is monumental. We talk about the 1918 pandemic without all the resources we have now.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think it's of great value. Yeah. So.
Well, this was fabulous. This is so informative and
really
brings so much more life to the services and the meaning, and I want to thank you.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff that goes on to create these things, right? And obviously, a million times more this year. But I do think people find it fascinating to know, well, how did you do all this? What were the challenges? How did you go about it? How did you make your decisions? All those things. I think it's fascinating, right? In a lot of different ways. So
it is.
I just want to say that everything, with all the cuts that had to be made for Shabbat and Shabbat morning services, it's been incredible, because the fact that you've all put everything into it, including all these classes, and this whole month of Elul has been something that it's not coming from anywhere else. You guys have made it work.
Well, thank you. And I have to tell you, you know what? The truth is, this has been in this way, okay? I don't mean to sound like crazy, but the pandemic has been a blessing in a number of ways. What we're doing right now, I'm telling you, we would not be doing this. I wouldn't be having a weekly class for an hour.
You wouldn't need
at 12 o'clock or at any time, by the way. Okay?
Is today your birthday?
My birthday was September 10th.
Well, happy birthday.
Thank you very much. And
happy belated birthday.
It's great to be 40 again.
We get to take this year off of our calendar. We get to take this year off our age.
I agree. This year did not.
I sent you a text last week, Don, for happy birthday.
I did.
So I don't have to worry about my birthday next week. I'm just going to be the same age next year. Is that how it works?
That's right. Cool. Yeah.
All good.
39 and holding.
That's right.
So thank you. I'm going to leave you so you can go about your day.
We're all going to leave now. So everyone, Shana Tova.
Thank you.
Shana Tova.
Be healthy, and